Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. We've got Big E and Rudo coming to you live on a Thursday on a Cup Final game day. Not that anyone would know it because everything else is being reported on in the NHL like it's already the offseason because these games
are
so spread out. I don't know. It's a bit weird, but it is what it is. If Florida wins tonight, they'll take a stranglehold on the series. I don't think we're too interested in talking too much about the game before it happens, so we'll save that for Friday's show, maybe.
Yeah.
A couple of news items on the day. The only one that is really Avs-related. Kroenke Sports and Entertainment is now the sole owner of Elitches, which doesn't necessarily mean anything. This was already the plan, if you've heard about their eventual goals to create what would you call it? A city center, whatever you want to call the area there. They want to build it up and put a practice facility in there for both the Avs and the Nuggets, as well as a bunch of apartments and shopping and all sorts of stuff. But they did officially buy out the other owner of Elitches and now are the sole owner of that property. So maybe things can start moving forward. This is probably mostly a big nothing burger, but maybe you look at Bettman's comments the other week and say it had something to do with it. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure. Listen, it's always been in the works. And you're talking about smart people. KFC people are smart people, Kroenkes, on the real estate. And obviously on the sporting side of things too. But on the real estate side of things, they're some of the smartest people around. So that's always been in the works. I can tell you that, God, man, early 2000s, we were still talking about trying to add a practice sheet to that building, and it was a new building. And, again, I'm not a construction guy or a zoning guy or a city guy, but, because of the train, the railroad right there, it was almost virtually impossible to add like a practice sheet, you know what I mean? Like you see in Columbus or Jersey and, places like that. And, so that kind of went to bed. But it's always made sense, you know what I mean? Like across the street right there, because it's such prime real estate development when you think about it, you know what I mean? And it's right there, a little bridge over the railroad. And here you are with shops, restaurants, a rink. Now, like we've said before, you're still years away, right? You know what I mean? From that, right?
Sounds like the Broncos want to build a new stadium down the road a little bit too. So maybe that area opens up. Like, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're still talking about years away. In the meantime, it is what it is, and those projects take time, and they're smart people, like I said. I'll give them the praises. They're smart people. So whenever they do, it's always smart. And, so it's going to be a great place. When does that mean? I don't know. You might have 2 kids by then. I'm not sure. We'll see, Tiff might be married. I don't know. You know what I mean? And maybe I'll be a grandpa, who knows? But, yeah. No, all kidding aside, and again, everything they do usually is fantastic, right? So it's always fantastic. So I'm sure it will be good.
Yeah,
There's a big question mark.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, all jokes aside, when you have the GM of the NHL come out and say, hey, practice facilities are a big deal. They're one of the number one things out there we think that draws free agents to cities. And no doubt true in basketball as well. Maybe that's a little bit, I wouldn't call it a deadline necessarily, but something that jump-started the engine for the Kroenkes a little bit and said, hey, maybe
Maybe.
accelerating the plan here for getting. Again, I don't know that it's really going to accelerate the plan, but maybe they said we should get this going. Go ahead.
What was the franchise fee for the latest, Seattle and
for Vegas it was 500. I forget what it was for Seattle.
750, whatever it was. So maybe, the first thing and then they teach you, right? They teach your ownership group how things work in the National Hockey League, and one of the main things they do, and that's what they had to do in Vegas and they had to do in Seattle, is build up an adequate facility. You know what I mean? That could be good for the sport, for the city, for everything. And again, not that we always say it, not that the people at Family Sports that we love and are great friends of ours, and that's not the point. It's just a question of space and the material that needs to go into space, from recovery rooms to all that kind of stuff. So the NHL always pushes for great facilities. And I can tell you, I know for a fact, Joe's been around looking at practice facilities for the last couple of years. I know for a fact, that he's gone to a few places. So it's so that's been going on for years. And, again, does that jumpstart it? Maybe the Bettman comments that, not about the Avalanche, more about, the diffusing the state tax in Florida and, Dallas and those places, and saying, no, it matters when you run a well-oiled organization and good coaches and good players and a good practice facility, because Rick Tocchet is one of the ones that went public in Vancouver and said one of the reasons he didn't sign in Vancouver, not the main reasons, just one of the reasons, was they don't have a practice facility there. And these guys, it's kind of like my days at McNichols, where we got in our cars and, went half dressed or full dressed to DU in our cars and, skated. And, so Vancouver's still in that mode, you know what I mean? And, they just haven't pulled the trigger on anything. And I think that's why Bettman was kind of saying those comments. Like somebody was asking in chat, what were the comments? But it wasn't specific to the Avs. But yeah, maybe it triggered the Avs to go, yeah, maybe, all right, it's time now. It's time to get this project going. We've sat on it long enough. And again, not that they're sitting on it, but these things take time, especially when you're smart people and diligent people, and when it comes down to real estate.
Apparently $650 for Seattle was the fee. But certainly, and I know we have a lot of people that watch and listen from Canada where this isn't as big a deal because you guys have rinks everywhere. But in the U.S., any additional rinks is good. If you're a fan of hockey, every city in the United States needs more hockey rinks, full stop.
100%.
It's hard to find them. So the more rinks you can get built, the better.
And you don't have the 5 a.m. practice,
Yeah, exactly. And then maybe someday the ice actually becomes affordable. That'll never happen, but I can dream.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. This is also a good segue into some of the other news. Now, I don't know how close this actually is. I don't know if the NHL is even interested in actually going back to Atlanta, but supposedly there's an ownership group in Atlanta ready to make an expansion bid. They supposedly have an arena agreement in place. Should they go back? Is third time the charm for Atlanta, for the NHL, or is this stupid?
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it is I'm not a fan, of this one right here, because of when I played, the Thrashers were there, right? And they were an expansion team. I'm not mad at them for not picking me because I was protected. So we'll leave it at that. You know what I mean? So I wasn't left exposed. I was protected by the Rangers. So there's no hard feelings towards Atlanta. I was a hot commodity. That's how bad the expansion draft was back then. Even guys like me were protected. You had to go lower and lower. That's crazy.
No, look, you can hang that over Gabe for the rest of your life. You were protected and he wasn't. All right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, exactly. That's the one thing I have over him. And my looks. That's two things. No, but Atlanta, I look back and it was just, it was badly run. They were losing. There was no one in the stands. It was just not well organized. It felt like an expansion team. You know what I mean? It just felt like I don't know. I don't want to say it, but I'll say it like a recreational team. You know what I mean? It was just not like that wasn't the NHL. Again, I can't speak for living there or, all I know is, we would go there and I actually enjoyed it there. There's a place called Buckhead, you know what I mean? And that's where the teams would stay. It's like 15 minutes. I mean, again, don't hold me to that. I'm just trying to remember back then. And restaurants, a nice place, and then go downtown for the game, right? But Atlanta Flames were there in the 70s, right? Didn't work. They go to Calgary, and then they come back. It didn't work, and they moved to Winnipeg. Um, the one argument, because I know and I've heard it, people say, well, look in Colorado, it didn't work in the 70s, and then it's been a love affair since 96, since the Avalanche came back from Quebec. True. But I go back to what even Bettman was saying about those comments 2 seconds ago. You need good ownership. You need good staff, good people, good players. You know what I mean? And it starts there. If that's wrong,
it was wrong last time.
That's my point. So it was wrong, and I don't remember who was there. So it's not personal. I don't remember who owned it, but it just didn't work out. Now, if they go in there, and again, the league is a lot better now. When I say better, they support you a lot better as a franchisee than they probably did back then. They surround you better. They give you better parameters and better instruction tools, or even classroom type environment to learn and see exactly how to do it, and listen to. The league can be very influential and let you know who to hire and as your staff and all that kind of stuff, because they know and they see who's been around. So that's a little more helpful. So that helps. Would it work in Atlanta? Now, I don't know. But the more you hear about it, because you hear it all the time everywhere, that that's real. So it's not like it's the Quebec city where you're trying. And again, I'm the first guy that would love to have the Nordiques back, and you know that. But I just don't think it's going to happen. The size of the market, the Canadian dollar, and the way Mr. Bettman kind of sees it, I don't think he sees that as a future, and that's not a dagger at him. It's more the way it is. And when you hear where it comes from and you see the scoops on the Atlanta side of things, and that's happening. I mean, in my book, that's happening. You hear that one, you hear Houston, right, as the two all the time. And you're like,
Houston
it's probably real.
There's some cooking behind that for sure.
Yeah. And then if you hear Quebec, it's more like, okay, they did put up that fee back then, right? I don't remember what it was, like $10 million, whatever it was. And with Vegas, and one of them was going to lose that, and they lost it. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, I would love to bring back the Nordiques, Bruce. Trust me, it's a piece of history there for me. And it's for its family, it's everything. But, I don't see it, even though I would love for it to happen. But that's why I don't have any affinity to Atlanta. You know what I mean? So for me, it should go in Quebec, but I don't think my opinion really matters or is heavily weighted. So I'm pretty, I don't know. I don't want to say, but I've kind of turned the page on the return of the Nordiques, you know what I mean? Because it's like, I just don't see it. But I see things like Atlanta and things like that. And again, you're talking about big markets and lots of money and lots of people, and you can't compare that to Quebec. And I'll give you a quick example. I remember when this happened, right after the Knights were announced as the expansion team. We had been at the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, and all those families from Quebec came to visit us in Vegas. I was living in Vegas at the time, and we took them to Top Golf on the Strip there, and I remember they had a couple beers, and one guy grabbed me by the shoulders, and he's like, "I get it." He didn't speak English, and I go, "What do you mean you get it?" He goes, "I get it. We stood no chance. We stood no chance." And because he's living there, he's there for a week, and he's like, "We had no chance in that market against a market like Vegas." You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was funny. He was like, as much as it pains me to say this, because this has been a great week and they had a great time, and he goes, "I get it. I'll shut my mouth," he says, "from now on." And I get it, because I agree with him. So that's my take on it.
It's true. Yeah, it is what it is. I do want to touch on a little bit more there, and then we'll move on to even more NHL news, I suppose. But we do need to pay a few bills first. So let's make sure we're jumping over and taking care of our side of things on that front. As you know, it's I don't know. What's the weather like in Boston today? Is it nice?
Beautiful today.
Love it.
Beautiful.
So great time for you to choose chill. Crack yourself a Coors Light. Just like us here in Denver, where it is quite nice out right now. Although it's been a little rainy. I don't know. The rain, every time I check my weather, the rain, it says it's going to stop and then it happens again. But either way, rain or shine, you can go with Coors Light. The mountains turn blue on the bottle or the can to let you know it's ice cold and ready to drink. You can jump in with them at any time. It's a great thing to do, whether you're watching Cup Finals, Game 4, or whether you're chilling at home, thinking about doing a grill out in the backyard. Maybe J Mike sipping a Coors Light while he's mowing yet another lawn. Maybe that's the way you go about it. Whatever you're doing, you can get yourself some Coors Light. They're available in every liquor store in the country. But the better way to do it is to go online to CoorsLight.com/DNVR, where you don't even have to get up off your couch. Thanks to Instacart, you can get Coors Light delivered right to your front door when you jump in with them. So go get yourself the Coors Light, cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. Whenever you embrace a chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open a Coors Light. Again, head over to CoorsLight.com/DNVR to get it delivered right to your front door. Make the most of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Let them know we sent you over there. Of course, please celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Once you've chosen chill with Coors Light, make sure you're also choosing to protect your eyeballs. Our great partner over at Shady Rays. You know that moment, the one where you realize you forgot your sunglasses at the beach or on the roof of your car at the gas station a couple of states away. Well, everybody's been there, and Shady Rays can help with that. Shady Rays, first of all, will give you a great deal on your new pair of sunglasses. They have hundreds of different styles, different polarizations, and you can get 35% off on any pair of polarized sunglasses from Shady Rays. But the wild part is, if you lose them or you break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair, no guilt trip, just replacements. So now you can actually wear your sunglasses and not worry about it. You can go get yourself some Shady Rays. They're the eyewear that has your back. They even have different styles that will come with corrective lenses. So if you're blind like E, Shady Rays got you covered. We've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you that 35% off offer with code DNVR at checkout over at ShadyRays.com. Go try for yourself. The shade's rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. When we talk about expansion, I always look at the divisions and how things would shake up in that way. Now, I think we've pretty well established the NHL going forward wants to keep the East and Western conferences. You can expect expansions to come in groups of 2, even if they are a little bit staggered. So, if you added a Houston and a Atlanta, one West, one East, things would make sense. But you end up with a bit of an interesting situation where you could go back to a 3-division format almost. Obviously, it wouldn't be perfect. But you would have those 5 teams in the Southeast now with the 2 Florida teams, a Georgia team, Nashville, Carolina. If you added to Houston, you're kind of starting to build this Central Division thing, which would be Dallas, Houston, Colorado, Utah. Maybe you throw Winnipeg in there. You could move the Midwest into its own division with Minnesota, Chicago, St. Louis, Columbus, maybe Detroit. They probably fit more with that Canada division up there. I don't know. Obviously, I'm just speculating here, but I do think one of the interesting conversations is how do you end up building a league when you add in these expansion teams, and does it help spark rivalries, or does it just kind of shift the divisions around minimally?
Or even I'll take it a step further. Like, because of what you just said, do you make more teams make the playoffs? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Now you know what I mean? Like it's always been 16 in the modern era, right? And
Only
it's like,
half the league now. Yeah.
and now it's half the league, and then if you add more teams now, you're below half. Uh, it's almost like baseball. Remember baseball was only like 4 teams a year, whatever. Back then, I'm talking about. I'm old.
It was 8, but
Was it 8 back then?
yeah,
What's it at now, baseball?
12, I think, with the plans.
Is it? Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, you would have to think that through, and you know that they've been thinking about that. When you do an expansion, it's not like you click a button that day, like, hey, kind of like the practice facility. It's not like, hey, here we are, let's start this thing here. So I'm sure they're thinking about everything you just talked about. Is it 3 divisions? Is it 2? Do we go back to 4? Do we go back to or whatever it is, and or do you go to 6? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how you make it work. And then do we add teams, in the pool of teams that make playoffs? And you know me, I'm a purist, so I get mad, but it is what it is, and
I mean,
I'll have to adapt.
yeah, I think the world better prepare for it. The league certainly seems to have a want to continue to expand, maybe a little bit slower, but it sure sounds like they have 40 teams as kind of the objective. And for a different day show to talk about the good and the bad of that, but
Yeah.
just prepare yourself for it. I'll put it to you that way. It's expansion is likely continuing.
I mean, greetings from the UK. That's awesome. But which makes me think, and it's been talked about. I'm telling you, it's been talked about. I mean, is there a team or 2 located in Europe? You know what I mean? Like, again, I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying that they've talked about it. I'm saying that who knows where they could go with that. I don't know. What's the difference between a flight from New York City to whatever, you're the closest city not city, but country in Europe, or New York City to LA? I mean, it's probably a shorter flight to go to Europe. So,
I mean, problem is that's every flight for them, but
no, I know. I'm just saying that, I'm not saying it will happen. I'm saying, but it's been talked about.
I mean, I think it'll
So I
happen
don't know.
eventually.
Is there 4 teams over there, and then their schedule's different? I don't know. I don't know, man. It's a weird world, and we just happen to be living in it, and it's just, there's always expansion, there's always new stuff, so you never know. So I'll never say never when it comes down to that.
Yeah, again, if you could, in theory, if money was no object, you could bring back the Concords or whatever, and you could get that cross Atlantic flight down to 3-4 hours probably, with modern technology. Granted, there are problems with going over Mach speed, but I truly believe in my lifetime we'll see transcontinental sports leagues. It'll happen, but
So I
I don't
wasn't
think
dumb. There you go. Perfect. All right.
I don't think the practice facilities going to be done before we see that, but
All right. Fair enough.
Moving on to actual current NHL relevant news. And I know you have a good amount of insight having worked in front offices and organizations. The New York Rangers move on from Chris Kreider. They trade him to the Anaheim Ducks. Anaheim does a pick swap and gives up a prospect for Kreider. Importantly for the Rangers, Anaheim takes on Kreider's full contract for them, giving them a little bit of flexibility this offseason to work with their cap and reset that organization a little bit after a tough year for them. The Kreider thing has been a pretty public trade situation. Obviously, the last full season we've seen, I don't know if I want to necessarily call it a meltdown from the New York Rangers, but certainly some front office drama from that organization. Is this a continuation of that, or is this them trying to turn over a new leaf?
Well, I think, well, Chris Kreider, did not have the best season last year, right? Let's not kid ourselves. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
That's okay. And I know he's owed that respect, and I like him as a player. Trust me. We went after him hard back then with the Ryan O'Reilly stuff, and so just FYI, it has nothing to do with the individual. There's many ways to look at it. Obviously, I don't even know, was Anaheim on his no trade list? Obviously, it probably was. You would think, all the way out west, nothing to do with the team. But like we talked about yesterday, those no movement clauses, and and it caused a lot of ruckus last year, right, with Trouba. It started in the summer. what I'll say about these things, and I'm not throwing the dagger at Chris Drury or those guys, because I don't know the real story, and it's none of my business. But you can just read a little bit of here and there, and a little bit of the fluff around everywhere. But I always say it's all in the presentation, and it probably was presented wrong, to Trouba, and it just went sour and it went wrong. And they went and they creeped up in the locker room, and guys were not too thrilled, and there was a kind of a crap show that went on for a while, and Kreider, same thing. So you would think they probably addressed it a little differently here the past month or so, or 2 months, or whatever it is that they got done. Work together. It helps when you've done one with Trouba just a mere few months ago. Right, so for Chris, for Pat Verbeek, they're on the same page. You know what I mean? At the agent, you talk with the, try to make something work. Everything's taken into consideration, right? The size of he's a great player. He's at the Four Nations last year. Whether he should have been there from a season or not doesn't matter. He was still one of the guys that was originally picked, right? From the original, right? So you're talking about a guy with a value, but then you have a tough year. That the Rangers are in a corner because they do want to make changes, like you talked about, and they have to make changes. They have to keep it fresh. Not too long ago, they sent a letter to their fans, Jeff Gordon, right at the time, and John Davidson, about, hey, this is a rebuild, and let's go. And it never really it turned. You're going to say, well, they went, President's Trophy last year. Yeah, true. You know what I mean? So now it's like it seems to be going backwards again. With not playoff success, obviously, this season, which they didn't make the playoffs. So now the value is, some people might say, like, oh, I don't know the player they got in return. I have no idea. I know he's a former second rounder, and that's all I can tell you, but I'm not familiar with him. You retain the salary, so you don't retain any salary, sorry. So that's part of the equation, what the cost is. You're flip-flopping in third and the fourth, right? So you're recouping the fourth from the Trouba trade. So those things are taken in consideration. You try to make it work. You try to make it fair. You don't want this to drag, right? And then you pull the trigger, which is a little bit like the order of business for the Avalanche last week with Nelson. Now they know that they have this much money gone. You know what I mean? So that helps. And nothing was retained. So and then you have a plan in place, and then you go from there.
I get it totally from the Rangers side of things. That's a team that feels like it needs a reset. You move on. You essentially get value out of a guy who just had a terrible year. Where I struggle with this is on Anaheim's side. And the salary is whatever. Anaheim has $1 billion in cap space. Doesn't matter. But what does Chris Kreider do for Anaheim? He's got 2 years left on his deal. Anaheim's not going to be seriously competitive within the next 2 seasons. They might be on an upward trajectory, but if anything, Chris Kreider's contract will expire right as they're starting to hit their stride. And had they taken on Kreider's cap hit and taken on assets to do so, I would get it. But instead, they moved backwards in this year's draft, and they gave up a prospect to acquire Chris Kreider. So is this some horrible trade? No, but it's a bit confusing to me from Anaheim's side of things. As many people have pointed out, somehow Anaheim just takes on all of the New York Ranger cast-offs now. I don't really get it.
Familiarity, right? Because you just did a deal together. Now, Trouba calls him, and I'm sure they were good friends with the Rangers, right? Because they played together so many years. And it's like, hey, you know what? It's actually great. This is great here. This is so different. And not that the Rangers are great. The Rangers are awesome. This is great. It's a great. How do you not like Manhattan? Come on. What a great place. MSG, world's most famous arena, right? So it's like, but come this way. This is what we do. We have this practice facility. We all live right here in Newport. Getting older, it's easier on the body, the nice weather and the sun, and all that kind of stuff. Joel Quenneville's now here. And these guys have been, like you said, on the youth movement side of things for a few years now. And it's time to, turn things around and win. When I say win, is that get in the playoffs. And so they feel that maybe by a player like that, they can use him with player X and go from there. And you know, and maybe they're doing different things here coming up, right? The Zegras and all that kind of stuff. We'll see what happens.
Azure does make a good point in chat as well. Flippable asset. Maybe you can get more assets for him down the line a little bit,
Sure.
depending on how things shake out. He does have a 15-team no move clause, so it is a little harder maybe to move him than some others, but you know, that's half the league that's still available to you. We do have to pay a few more bills here, so let's make sure we're doing that, getting in with that, and then we'll continue the conversation. As I mean, I don't. Were you a fan of the basketball floors in Madison Square Garden?
I can't dunk, but I have shot hoops and at MSG and McNichols and Ball Arena.
The parquet,
and I
is that what it's
basketball.
called? An MSG? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
If you want parquet floors, I'm sure Empire Today could do that for you. I don't know. I don't want them. I want normal hardwood. Actually, I'm a carpet guy, but everyone hates me for that. It's fine. You can get hardwood or tile instead with Empire Today. Jump in, go with Empire Today. Make sure you get with them because they only carry the best products. They won't give you any of the junk some of the other places might. So you know their flooring is legit. Of course, they're professional flooring people, top to bottom, start to finish. They've got your backs. You can go take a look at their flooring. Obviously, you can go to them in stores, see whatever you want. You can also go online, measure out your space and see what it might look like. Or the coolest way is you can get a free in-home estimate today. You can call up Empire Today or go to empiretoday.com/DNVR. They'll come out to your house. They'll keep flooring swatches with them. You can see what they look like in your space with your furniture, like with the weird lighting behind me. You can see what it looks like with that flooring that you're thinking about getting, and it costs you nothing with Empire Today. So make sure you jump in with them and schedule that free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. And when you do schedule it, use the DNVR code and you can get a $350 discount on your new floors. Or, of course, you can always go to empiretoday.com/DNVR to get that $350 discount. Of course, restrictions apply, and visit empiretoday.com/DNVR for full details. And you can always call 1-800-588-2300 Empire. Once you've got your new floors from Empire, make sure you also have a good way to get around the city. Jump in to a brand new Toyota at your local Front Range stores. They're the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, also the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche, whether it's a truck, which has always been part of Toyota's DNA, or they've got SUVs, they've got sedans, pretty much every car you can imagine under the sun. All of them pretty much have all-wheel drive, too. 17 different models available with all-wheel or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. They also have the most of anyone when it comes to low and zero-emission vehicles, even 16 different hybrids to choose from, even hybrid trucks. So Toyota has it all. You can jump into one of their SUVs and take command of the road or the trail, especially here in Colorado if you're an off-roader type. Visit those Front Range Toyota dealerships, including AutoNation Toyota, Rathbone, Centennial, Corbin Toyota, Boulder, Groove Toyota, Littleton, Mountain State Toyota in Denver, Stevens Toyota, Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Again, Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I wanted to jump off of the Kreider conversation and the Nelson conversation. Avs and Rangers doing some of their business pretty early in this offseason. Stanley Cup final not even over yet, like we talked about. And I kind of wanted to dive into the benefits and the risks of doing that. Because, hey, obviously, one immediate benefit, that part of your offseason business is done. You're ahead of the curve when it comes to that. You're not maybe quite as crammed as some other teams are when it comes to the draft and free agency. But we've seen over the years, it can work out great, and it can be risky to sign a guy or trade a guy this early in the season before the offseason market gets set. How does a front office balance that risk? When are you willing to do something early in an offseason and not wait for what the market trends tell you a guy might cost?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, I use the word fit in lineups all the time, and I think in the front office is feel is the word. You know, I mean, you have to know the feel of where things are at, where the market's at, where a lot of those guys in the front office that get there in the morning and they have their routine. You know, and believe it or not, like Monday they're like, I'm calling this division. Tuesday, I'm calling this division. Wednesday, and then it starts again. Just to check in. Hey, I'm just checking in, Rudo. See what's going on. I just want to say hi. Do you need anything? Or what I mean? And there's a lot of guys like that. And try to feel a little bit what's going on. Pro scouting is a lot helpful for that too. Press boxes, what's going on, what's the feel. Those guys are spread out throughout the globe, right? And especially in NHL buildings and American League buildings, and see what's going on, and you kind of be able to gauge a little bit of a market. It's like the stock market, right? Sometimes it's you just wish you would have waited, and sometimes you just wish you would have done it sooner. Now, I've always been a guy that when you feel it's right, and then you feel that you need to get it done in order to move on to something else, then you get it done. You can't compare yourself to different teams, or you might be in a situation where this needs to get done now in order for you to do, if that was A, then in order to do B, C, and D. You know what I mean? So I think every situation is different, and there's times that you can just sit there and wait. Look back at the Matt Duchene trade. Sit there and wait. It's really not doing anything, right? Like it's like whatever. And again, if you're a different team and you use that strategy, you probably get fired. So, so it worked out in the situation you're in. Now I think that free agency can be tricky. I've seen it where you do believe 100% you're getting that guy, and next thing you know, that guy's gone somewhere else, and you're like, what? And it happens all the time. Even though you really think you're getting it, then all of a sudden your plan is derailed. So it's like, I think it's important to have a pulse, to have a feel, and that's number one. And it's important to have a plan that's mapped out, and how do you get there? And if doing something quicker makes you get to your plan and helps you get there because you've already established the parameters, we're going there, we're not going lower than that, on that type of player, then you get it done. And then there's always some that can be available one day to another. We all know that. Like, look at the coaching carousel, all of a sudden Boston names their coach. Next thing you know, DeBoer gets fired the next day. So I don't know if DeBoer gets fired 2 days before, does Boston look at him? Maybe. Again, so you never know. Things happen every day. Some fights or some unhappy campers during the season, during the summer, negotiations are going south, and people are like, what, I'm out. I want out. So things change, But then you've already got your big fish left winger. But then all of a sudden, I don't know, give me a big fish left winger, Mikko Rantanen, and let's say he's not happy and he wants out, right? Then you're like, oh crap, I had a chance to go get him. So feel, timing is always important. I'm not the guy that Monday morning quarterbacks it, because I do believe that if you're prepared, if you do the right things, and if you're willing to just have a plan set up and you do it, you never look back. Because there's always instances of woulda, coulda, shoulda. And then you move forward because you were happy at that time to do it. It's just like when you sign a deal, right? You're happy at that time, you smile, and you go to dinner that night and you invite everyone. And, and then 3 years into it, you're like, oh God, I'm underpaid. Or, well, guess what? Like, again, that was your choice, right? You decided to sign for 3 years. You didn't want to take that 1 year deal and take a chance. So you can't have everything all the time. And I think if you're well prepared, you go for it. And then, sometimes it will change. And as long as you're ready for it and never looking back.
I think there's a couple of interesting things that you can look at here that show the differences, right? When you are aggressive and you sign someone early in the offseason or whatever you want to call it, Cale Makar for the Avs is a great deal. They signed Cale Makar to a $9 million deal, and within the next 48 hours, that's a great contract, right? You're looking at, hey, we got that done and we got ahead of the market, and now there's a bunch of dudes making more than Cale who are not as good as Cale Makar. And
Darnell Nurse or whatever,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Seth Jones got way overpaid too, but now he might win a cup, so fair enough. But that's the good side of getting in early on a contract. The bad side of potentially getting early on a contract, though, is sometimes you end up overpaying in a deal like that, right? If the Avs gave $9 million to Cale Makar and Darnell Nurse turned around and signed a $7 million deal, the Avs are going, well, maybe you still got fair value because he's Cale freaking Makar, but it's not the absolute steal of a deal that it turned into for the Avs. So that's the risk you take a little bit there. This Nelson one, I don't know. Let me get your opinion. Do you think this Brock Nelson one sets the center market this offseason, or do you think it's more of a one-off deal that's in its own realm?
Well, he's a little different. You always got to look like how old's the guy? How old is that? I mean, the term's not there. It's 3 years. It's not 6 or 7. So, I mean, I think it's a one-off in the sense that the Avs needed to do what they needed to do, and they did it. And I think he looked at it as an opportunity to, maybe he could have gotten more. You know what I mean? Like, actually, as a fact, he could get more. I can tell you that. So now he's like, but I like it. It was unfinished business this year in the playoffs. I felt that we had a team to go far. The same coach is coming back. The same meat of the players are coming back. The goaltending is set. The management was good to me. Look, obviously, he ends up signing, so he must have liked it. Likes the city of Denver. He likes the culture, and it's like, I'm going to get it done. And maybe he wanted a 4-year deal, and you thought he'd get more. And then all of a sudden, he gets the 7.5, and he gets a 3-year deal, and it's both sides are happy. Then he's like, let's do it. You know what I mean? Now, does that set the market? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, again, it's such a weird free agent class. You know what I mean? That it's there's not that many. Again, we talked about it. I think Sam Bennett's a unicorn. You know what I mean? So you can't even compare him to anyone. So I don't know. Like we talked about it the other day. Somebody might give him that number, 10 or whatever it is. I mean, we're talking about at center. This is Brock Nelson. Now he's gone. There's not that many options to straighten the position of center if it's not a trade. You know what I mean? So I think Nelson is right where he needs to be. Again, everybody was saying the other day, it would have been nicer at 6. I know, but he wouldn't have signed. So so at the end of the day, he wouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? So and he wouldn't have done it anywhere else. So it's kind of like, I don't think at 7.5, 3 years is bad. So, I think it's fair. But he's in a different situation too. Like I can't compare to Bennett, can't compare it to, other Jonathan Toews, you know what I mean? Like, geez, a guy hasn't played in a few years, and so everybody's kind of unique in their own, and that's why you care and you take care of your own backyard, right? And that's what I meant earlier with, as an organization, you take care of your own backyard and you worry about the other side after. But sometimes it does affect and it does like make you mad, but it's more like on RFA status, where teams are like, are you kidding me? They gave him that crap. I'm screwed now. You know what I mean? With my guy, because he's going to want that, right? You know what I mean? So, on the UFA side of things, I mean, you and I know that. That's where you make all your mistakes. You know what I mean? So, but everything goes out the window. You know what I mean? Like, there's not really any comparables, in my book.
We can jump onto another topic here since you brought up Sam Bennett. You talk about the Florida Panthers. We've all heard the stories about Sam Bennett and the potential money he could get this offseason. Look, there's some justification to that. Obviously, he's having unbelievable playoffs. He's been a good playoff performer. He brings a lot of grit, yada, yada. Not what I want to get into. I do want to talk about the cup tax, though, because the cup tax is a very real thing. Every year, guys who win the cup get paid a little bit extra in free agency because they're now a winner. They're now successful, whatever you want to talk about on that front. With someone like Sam Bennett, I get it. There's some justification there, but isn't the cup tax not a little bit of a trap when you start talking about guys down the lineup? Like if you wanted to go get Thomas Nosek this offseason, who's played in only 13 of Florida's 20 playoff games. He only has 3 points in those games. Should you really be paying a cup tax for a guy like that if Florida goes and goes on to win it this year? Or are you just overpaying for something that you're convincing yourself is better.
It's funny because you're talking about no sector. I love him.
I know you love him. I know.
For years, I fell in love with him that year in Vegas, and it was unbelievable in the playoffs the year before for Grand Rapids. Found his way into a role a la Stefan Yell, right? Just fourth line guy, whatever it is, third line, fourth line, face off, smart, PK. Just you get stuck in there against the first line, and what are you talking about? They can't even be a shutdown line. And he finds a job every year, and he seems to go there for like a 1 year. And every time I'm like in the summer, I'm like, God, like, let's sign this guy. You know what I mean? And it's like, and he never makes that much money. So the cup tax applied to a guy like that? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe if he stays put, you know what I mean? And it's like, hey, for once we'll give this guy a 2-year deal instead of a 1-year deal somewhere, and we'll give him 1.5. I don't even know what Nosi's at. I bet you he's at what, 900. It just seems to be like that every year, at that price. So it's kind of like I think teams want winners, attracted to winners. I always say it, as a player, you win, it adds 5 years to your career. I don't care if you're a bottom of the lineup guy, especially if you're a bottom of the lineup guy, and that's why, like, my last year in Ottawa, I was so devastated. We lost 4 straight in the first round. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Because team success and you go down deep in the playoff probably would have saved my career. You know what I mean? So didn't get it done. And playoff success attracts, teams because people want to be surrounded by that. And it's front office people, coaches. You see it all the time. Avalanche, all those years, people were taking our front office people, our assistant coaches, because we were the mecca of the NHL. And it's the same thing now. I mean, look, it didn't take long for Ray Bennett to, get a new job, or, you know what I mean? And again, we like Ray or not, like, that's not the point. I like Ray. Some of the chat don't, which is okay. That's an opinion. But people want winners. People want people that have been there in the trenches, that know how to do it, know how to react. So there is some sort of a cup tax. I agree. And it's a fair statement. Sometimes it can burn you because you're really thinking too big here with that player. You know what I mean? But it's called evaluating, and that's your job. If you're evaluating wrong, then that's on you. Good on the player because he makes his money. But wrong on you, and you'll probably get canned. So you know what I mean. So yeah, you got to be careful with it. But there is a factor of the cup tax, and you know what I mean. Like, hey, you want to be surrounded, and that's like that in any industry. It's like that in any field of of life. So people want to be surrounded by winners.
Yeah, I understand that, and I get it way more when you're talking about top 6 players, top pairing guys. Yeah, they're really good and they're helping you win. I do think you're taking risk when you're paying extra for a guy at the bottom of a lineup, when you're paying that extra $500K. For sure. And sometimes it works out. I'm not going to say it never works, but cost efficiency is the name of the game, not just for the Avalanche, but for the entire league in the cap era. Yes, we're seeing this cap explosion, but it's still going to be about who gets the most value per dollar a lot of the time in the NHL. So
100%.
Don't fall into the cup tax trap. That's all I'm saying. Because as we move into our main topic of the day to wrap up the show here, the Colorado Avalanche, as they sit right now, theoretically, they technically have 12 NHL forwards signed and 5 NHL defensemen if you include Keaton Middleton. If they wanted to, with $1.2 million of cap space, they could just do nothing, call up Jacob McDonald as their 6th defenseman, and have a call-up fill-in for LOC for the first couple of months of the season. They'd be under the cap. Mm-hmm. They could be done. Now, I think we all would agree we would not like that. That would be a pretty disappointing offseason if the Avs didn't do anything else this offseason. So we've talked a lot about how, hey, we expect some trades coming. We think the Avs are going to do some serious surgery to parts of their lineup this offseason, But realistically, what is the bare minimum the Avs have to do that you would be happy with their offseason? How little can they do and you still feel like they did what they needed to?
Well, 2 parts. So first part, Chad's talking about Darcy Kemper. Yeah, that's true. I mean, at that time, way too big of a cup tax for the Avalanche to swallow. Couldn't do it, right? They couldn't do it. That's why they went Georgiev. Now, to his defense, wasn't he a Vezina finalist this year, right? I mean, at some point, like, he did the job too, like him or not, I
right
like
up until round 1.
No, yeah, I'm talking about regular season. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, that's a great example. So, um, and now we're going back to your question, which was the Avalanche, the minimum that I would feel good. Like I do believe. I don't know if it's feeling good because I hate trades because it disrupts people's lives. So, but it's part of it. I do believe that they trade one of those mid-range. When I say mid-range, is the $4 to $5 million player, whether it's up front or on D. And I do believe that they use that to acquire what you're talking about, maybe something else, a roster player or two roster players, or draft capital to take that draft capital and go get that extra player, and then they have something in mind to for LOC. You know what I mean, as a replacement for a few months, whether it's I don't know, like I'm using names down there, Ivan, Pishpasha, whatever you got down there. It could very well be something like that. I don't know, or again, you're signing a guy that they like at the American League level that's a Group 6 or which is free, or somebody that's not getting QO'd and it's moving on, and they have their eye on him from the American League. It happens all the time. You know what I mean? So with that said, I do believe that the minimum they will do is make one of those trades with one of those salary that I talked about, the $4 to $5 million guy, and whatever they do with that is what I feel will help the roster today, not not tomorrow. They need capital to make moves, or they need capital maybe that to draft someone, and I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Again, you probably have plan A, B, and C, like we talked about in D, and then once A is done, you go to B, but it's rarely that D's there before A, B, C. You know what I mean? So it's like you got to make things in order, and I think obviously we have the draft coming up, and we have all that stuff and free agency. So I do believe it starts with them making a move on one of those guys that is between $4 and $5 million in salary.
Yeah. Look, to be content with their offseason, they can't just do nothing. They can't do the bare minimum. I think that would be a mistake, to say the least. So, look, they can sign Sam Malinsky with the cap space they have now, hopefully.
Sure.
And then they still need another bona fide defenseman before you even get into potentially trading out some of those guys. You don't want Keaton Middleton in your starting lineup.
No.
Even if you like the guy more than I do, fine, but there's no way you can call him more than a number 7, really. Then you look at their forward core, and I think this is before the trades happen. You really need a bona fide third line winger for this lineup. That's on the forward side. That's their biggest hole. We've talked about the Miles Wood situation enough. We don't need to go into that again, but I don't think the Avs want to go into this season looking at that third line saying, well, we're going to try some stuff here, especially with LOC missing the first couple of months of the season. I think that's at bare minimum, they need to do something there. And you do that by moving out money, and then you have to fill the money spot you create with that. I get that. But you move out money, and maybe you look to fill that third line winger spot with a player not going to live up to this, but you're looking for a player closer to Jonathan Drouin than you are a player of Kiviranta's caliber to help fill out your forward core and really become a strength there. On the back end, I think the reality of the back end is your second pairing probably needs a change. Now you're drifting into hey, you have to make some trades for sure to get this done. So things get a little bit more complicated there. But if the Avs were to just essentially run it back with their defense of the same top 4, Malinsky, and insert 6th D here, I think that would be a little bit disappointing too. So realistically, for me to be happy, you're probably looking at bare minimum 1, probably at least 2 trades that have to be made for the Colorado Avalanche. And then a significant work getting done to fill in the roster holes that make you feel like the Avs got better and aren't just filling out their lineup. I don't think signing Brock Nelson means the Avs can relax this offseason. They still even to hit the floor of what I would be happy with, there's still a decent amount of work to do. And if you really want to make moves and make waves in the lineup, you probably have a lot of work to do.
Or do you go to a level of the Natushkin? I'm not saying I would. I'm just throwing it out there. And, they're going to look at it. You go to a level of Natushkin where you're getting a roster player and a draft pick. You know what I mean? So
AJ just posted his potential trade piece on DNVR.com. So go read that. Become a diehard.
And that's what I was trying to say, because I did read it. And it's like, that's what I mean. Like, maybe you knock off two stones at once, right? With that kind of stuff, because you're getting some draft capital with that and you're doing a roster player. Or I don't know. Again, it's on their board. It's on the war room there at Ball Arena, and it's like potential scenarios. And what are we pushing for? And then when do we have to go to the other push? Because this one's not going to happen. And then you don't want to miss the boat on the other push, right? And that's what's so complicated and so hard. So, is this, we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? But it's got to be interesting to see. But you're right. They can't just sit there. They got to make a move. And sometimes one move can fill two holes at once. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
Yeah. Look, I've always said if a deal arises that makes you better, you should be doing it, right? And obviously that's easy to say, a lot harder to do in practice, because you start having conversations about what actually makes you better. We sit here on the show all the time and say, look, you have McKinnon and McCarr, you've got a chance. But at what point do the Avs have to balance current versus future? Because right now it's easy to say, yeah, the Avs are all in. They're trying to win right now. But at a certain point, you have to at least account for some of the, right? McCarr is going to be an Av forever. So yes, you want to win right now, but also what about the next 7 years of Cale McCarr? At what point do the Avs have to balance those books a little bit?
Yeah, and it does dry up, right? Everything dries up. There's not unlimited resources. But look at Tampa. I feel they've done a good job to, always kind of, again, did it work out every time? No. Were they bounced out early this year? Yeah. Did I like the trades and the moves they made at the deadline? Yeah. Would I have done them? Yeah, I would have. So you're in that mode. You still have a goalie. You still have Hedman. It's very similar to the Avalanche. Kucherov, very similar to the Avalanche. You have the pieces that can make you win any night. So you just have to find the right chemistry, the right ingredients, because your recipe's there. You're not changing your recipe. You're not changing your culture. You're not changing your thought process. You're just going to interchange some ingredients to make you successful. And you have to, and you can't just stay still and sit still. And it doesn't exist in hockey. It doesn't. And sometimes people are like, well, look, see if they would have been patient. Use Sam Bennett, you know what I mean, with the Flames. Guys, it wouldn't have happened because it was past due. It had run its course. And it's never
too long
coming
as
back.
It was. Yeah, right.
That's my point. And then does that mean that Sam Bennett's a bad player at that time? No. He is what he is. But that's why you drafted him fourth overall, because you thought he would be that, But then all of a sudden, it's not working. So it's not that you waited too long. It didn't happen. And it wouldn't have happened. So you can't be stubborn and say, oh, God, but we got him. It is what it is. And then you make a trade for him. You didn't get much in return for him. Nothing. And no offense to what they got. But Emile, whatever, he plays in Montreal now. But anyway, so sometimes it's like easier said than done afterwards. And people are saying, well, look at Robin Regeer when, they lost him to Theo and everything. But again, you look back, you would have been an Av. He wouldn't have played. You had Footy here. You had guys like that. Like, he wouldn't have played like he did when he went to Calgary. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that he's not a good player. It's just sometimes in one place, it's not the right fit for you. So you always have to look into that.
It's easy to do things in hindsight, right? In the moment, it's usually a different picture, but that's why it's hard. That's why I sit here on a podcast and NHL GMs get made fun of all the time for making stupid mistakes. So I'm sure I'd make all the same ones if I was in their shoes. I don't envy that position by any stretch of the imagination. we are winding down the show here. We are headed into overtime. If you want to continue the conversation, join us online at the DNVR.com. Won't be a long overtime here on this one. I just have one final question for you for the Colorado Avalanche offseason. How good can it be? Is there any world where the Avs come out of this offseason as Stanley Cup favorites or even top 3 to win the Stanley Cup next year? Or do you think there's going to be work to do in season?
Well, listen, I'm not going to back away from what I said last year. I do believe that they didn't get it done, but I do believe they were my favorite to win it all. Well, at least to get out of the West. So that makes you a top 2, right? If you're coming out of the West, it makes you a top 2. I'm going to double down again on it. I do believe they're in my top 2 or top 1 to get out of the West. I'm doubling down on it because I feel they're a better team now than they were a year ago in the summer. I feel that they'll be more hungry from that painful exit. Makes you a stronger, more dangerous team. So I do believe that they are still there, and I do believe that they'll get better here. By the time the puck drops for game 1 of the playoffs, before we have to get to the playoffs. But they do have it way more than enough to get to the playoffs. And I do believe that I have faith in those guys. They've done an unbelievable job. Now that it result on ice success, no. The players part of the blame for that? Absolutely. You got to go out there and deliver. We talked about it. The 20 guys dressed there. Did we say most of those 20 guys were close to their ceiling when it was all said and done? No, they weren't. You know what I mean? So there was a lot left to be on the kind of like the wings I eat, the wings you eat, right? There's none left on the wings you eat because you chew all the meat off the bone. And there's a lot to be left. You could have another meal later. So the Avalanche did not chew all the meat off the bones. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to be left there for what they have as a team. And don't blame coaches for that. I'm blaming players.
Well, you heard it here first. June 12th, Avs are East Stanley Cup favorites for 2026. We'll see if they're still the Stanley Cup favorites on July 12th. So a ways to go yet, but we are wrapping up for the day. We appreciate everyone hanging out with us. We'll be back tomorrow. I don't know. It's a Friday. Maybe we'll try and do something fun for the show, but we appreciate all y'all. This has been the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.
We all silly like the mayor.